The rich cowboy found the black fat cook feeding his old parents in the pre-dawn darkness, her gentle hands spooning broth between their cracked lips as they lay forgotten and frail. The townsfolk see only fat cook, dismissed, mocked, reduced to her labor by those who believe her place is permanent servitude until death claims her in some dusty kitchen. But the wealthy cattleman watching from the doorway carries guilt over his abandoned parents and choices that haunt his sleepless nights. What he doesn't know: the woman saving his family harbors secrets from an educated past, while dangerous men from back east close in with questions about her true identity. Her hidden knowledge could elevate her beyond anyone's imagination, but exposure threatens to destroy the fragile sanctuary she's built in this unforgiving territory. Will his discovery lead to her salvation or her ruin? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Amelia Sutton wiped the grease from her hands and counted the coins in her worn leather pouch. $3.47. Not enough for this month's payment to her sister back east. The children needed school supplies, and winter was coming. She trudged across the dusty yard of the Henderson Ranch, ignoring the snickers from the cow hands lounging by the fence. They always had something to say about her size, her color, or her quiet demeanor. She had learned to let their words roll off her like rainwater. At the Miller homestead, she scrubbed pots until her knuckles bled. Mrs. Miller barely looked at her when she handed over the measly payment. The woman's children stared at Amelia like she was some curiosity in a traveling show. By evening, exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders. She made her way toward the Lawton property, where she had been picking up odd kitchen work. The main house sat dark and silent. Too silent. Curiosity drew her to the side window. Inside, she saw them. The old couple lay in separate beds, thin as scarecrows, their breathing shallow and labored. Empty water glasses sat on the nightstand. A plate of moldy bread lay untouched nearby. Amelia's heart clenched. She recognized the signs: neglect, abandonment, slow starvation. She tried the back door, unlocked. The house smelled of sickness and decay. The old man's lips were cracked and bleeding. The woman's eyes had sunken deep into her skull. Without thinking, Amelia filled a pitcher with clean water. She found some flour and a few withered vegetables in the pantry. Not much, but enough to make a thin broth. She lifted the old woman's head gently and spooned small sips of water between her lips. The woman's eyes fluttered open, confusion mixing with desperate gratitude. 3 weeks passed. Amelia came every morning before dawn and every evening after her other jobs. She used her own money to buy proper food: eggs, fresh milk, vegetables from the market. She watched Agnes and Walter Lawton grow stronger. Their eyes cleared. Their skin regained some color. Agnes began to recognize her. Walter tried to speak. Amelia read to them from a worn Bible she found on their dresser. She helped them sit up. She changed their bedding and washed their clothes. She made detailed notes about their medications and symptoms in her careful handwriting. The work exhausted her, but something deep inside her chest felt lighter each time she saw improvement in their condition. On a Tuesday morning, she was spooning oatmeal into Agnes's mouth when heavy boots echoed across the wooden floor behind her. Amelia froze. She turned slowly to see a tall man in expensive clothes standing in the doorway. His face was hard, weathered by sun and wind. His eyes moved from her to his parents, taking in the clean sheets, the organized medicine bottles, the bowls of proper food. Jedrick Lawton had returned home early from his cattle drive. He stared at her for a long moment. Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. She had no permission to be here, no right to make medical decisions, no authority to spend money on his parents' care. She waited for the accusations, the anger, the threats to have her arrested. Instead, he asked quietly, "How long have you been doing this?" "3 weeks, sir." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. His gaze moved to his father, who was sitting up in bed for the first time in months. Walter's eyes were alert and focused on his son. "They were dying," Amelia said. "The woman who was supposed to care for them stopped coming. The food money was gone." Jedrick's jaw tightened. "Martha was stealing from them." "Yes, sir." He walked closer to his mother's bed. Agnes reached up with a trembling hand and touched his cheek. Tears gathered in the old woman's eyes. Amelia had never seen Agnes react to anyone else with such warmth. Not even her own son had received such recognition in weeks. "What gives you the right to make medical decisions for my parents?" His voice carried no anger, only genuine curiosity. Amelia straightened her shoulders. "I have some knowledge of healing. I could see what they needed." Some knowledge. He picked up her notebook from the nightstand. His eyebrows rose as he read her detailed observations about symptoms, medication timing, and dietary needs. Her handwriting was precise. Her medical terminology was accurate. No cook should know such things. His eyes met hers with new interest. "Where did you learn to write like this?" The question hung in the air between them. Amelia felt the weight of secrets she had carried across half the country. Her educated past, her father's business scandal. The reason she had fled everything familiar to hide in frontier kitchens. Outside, she heard Sheriff Jessup's voice talking to the ranch hands. He had been making rounds, warning employers about getting too comfortable with their help, about maintaining proper boundaries. If word spread about her unauthorized medical care, she would lose every job in the territory. Her sister's children would have no support. She would have nowhere left to run. But Walter Lawton was trying to speak. Agnes was eating solid food. 2 people were alive who would have died without her intervention. Jedrick waited for her answer, his parents' lives hanging in the balance between them. Amelia's hands trembled as she set down the medicine bottle. The truth sat heavy in her throat, demanding release after years of careful hiding. "I was educated back east," she said quietly, "before circumstances changed." Jedrick's eyes narrowed. He studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. "What kind of education?" "The kind that teaches Latin names for medicines, the kind that explains why willow bark reduces fever and how proper nutrition heals the body." Agnes stirred in her bed, reaching for Amelia's hand. The old woman's grip was stronger than it had been in months. Jedrick walked to the window and stared out at his ranch. His cattle grazed in the distance. His wealth stretched as far as the eye could see, but his parents had been dying while he built his empire. "Stay," he said, without turning around. "I'll pay you proper wages to care for them." Relief flooded through Amelia's chest. "Thank you, sir. Call me Jedrick. And I want to know more about this education of yours." 2 weeks later, word had spread through town about the unusual arrangement at the Lawton Ranch. Sheriff Jessup rode up the dusty path with his badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. Amelia was teaching Agnes to strengthen her grip using small exercises when she heard the heavy boots on the porch. Her stomach clenched with familiar fear. "Lawton!" Sheriff Jessup's voice boomed through the house. "We need to talk." Jedrick emerged from his office, his face calm, but his eyes alert. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "It's about your cook. People are saying she's been practicing medicine without a license. That's against the law in this territory." Through the bedroom doorway, Amelia watched Jedrick's posture straighten. He had grown protective of her work over the past weeks. He had seen his parents transform from dying invalids to functioning human beings. "She's caring for my parents. That's not practicing medicine. Mrs. Henderson says she treated her husband's infected wound last week, used some kind of surgical procedure." Sheriff Jessup's tone carried the weight of social pressure. The town's elite wanted boundaries maintained. Amelia's heart stopped. She had helped the ranch hand when his cut had turned dangerous. She had cleaned the wound properly and applied antiseptic herbs. The infection had cleared within days. "The man would have lost his arm otherwise," Jedrick said. "That's not the point. We can't have people overstepping their place in this community. It causes problems." The sheriff's meaning was clear. A black woman showing medical knowledge threatened the established order. It made people uncomfortable. It raised questions about intelligence and capability that some preferred not to face. "I think you should leave," Jedrick said quietly. "This isn't over, Lawton. The town council is getting involved." After the sheriff rode away, Jedrick found Amelia in the kitchen. She was grinding herbs with shaking hands, trying to prepare Agnes's evening medicine. "Tell me about your real education," he said. Amelia stopped grinding. The moment she had dreaded for 3 years had arrived. My father owned a shipping business in Philadelphia. He believed women deserved the same opportunities as men. Go on. He sent me to the best schools. I studied literature, languages, mathematics. I took medical courses from doctors who taught at the university. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. I can read Latin and French. I understand anatomy and chemistry. I know more about healing than most frontier doctors. Jedrick absorbed this information slowly. What happened to your father's business? His business partner accused him of embezzlement, took everything. My father died of a heart attack during the trial. Pain flickered across her face. I had to leave. People believed I was involved in the scandal. So you came west. I came west to disappear, to become invisible, to survive. But survival was becoming more complicated. That evening, a well-dressed stranger appeared in town, asking questions about a woman matching Amelia's description. He spoke with an Eastern accent and carried official-looking papers. The stranger visited the hotel, the general store, and the saloon. He described a woman who had fled Philadelphia 3 years ago, a woman whose family had been involved in a financial scandal. News of the stranger's questions reached the Lawton Ranch by morning. Amelia paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Someone's looking for me, she told Jedrick. I have to leave. Not yet. His voice was firm. My parents need you, and I think you need to know who this man is and what he wants. That afternoon, the stranger rode up to the ranch house. He was tall and thin, with graying hair and intelligent eyes. He dismounted and approached the porch where Jedrick waited. I'm looking for Miss Amelia Sutton, the man said. I have reason to believe she might be in this area. Amelia watched from behind the kitchen curtains. Her legs felt weak with fear. I'm Thomas Whitmore, attorney from Philadelphia. I have urgent business regarding her father's estate. Jedrick glanced toward the kitchen window. What kind of business? The kind that could change her life completely. New evidence has come to light about the charges against her father. Evidence that clears his name and restores his reputation. Amelia's hand flew to her throat. After 3 years of hiding, the past had found her. But whether it brought salvation or destruction remained to be seen. Thomas Whitmore pulled legal documents from his satchel, and Amelia's carefully constructed world began to shift beneath her feet. Amelia stepped onto the porch, her chin raised despite the fear coursing through her veins. Thomas Whitmore's eyes widened with recognition and relief. Miss Sutton, I've been searching for you for months. What do you want? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Whitmore opened his leather satchel and withdrew a thick stack of documents. Your father's business partner, Harold Mitchell, has confessed. He falsified the books and blamed your father to cover his own theft. The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. 3 years of running. 3 years of hiding her intelligence and education. 3 years of believing her father died in disgrace. Mitchell is in prison, Whitmore continued. Your father's name has been cleared. His assets, which Mitchell seized illegally, are being restored to his estate. Jedrick stepped closer, studying the legal papers over Whitmore's shoulder. What does that mean exactly? It means Miss Sutton is now the sole heir to a considerable fortune. Properties in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, investment accounts, her father's shipping interests, which have continued to operate profitably. Amelia gripped the porch railing. The cook who scrubbed floors for $3 a week was actually wealthier than most people in the territory, wealthier than many of the townspeople who dismissed her as insignificant. How much? She whispered. Approximately $200,000, plus ongoing business income. Jedrick's eyebrows rose. Even his cattle empire was worth less than half that amount. There's more, Whitmore said. Your father established an educational trust before his death. He wanted to fund schools for women and underserved communities. The trust has been growing for 3 years. Amelia's legs felt weak. She sank into a porch chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelation. I need time to think, she said. Of course. But Miss Sutton, You should know that your presence is requested in Philadelphia. There are business decisions to make, legal matters to resolve. After Whitmore left for his hotel room in town, Amelia sat in the kitchen staring at the legal documents. Her entire identity had shifted in the span of an hour. Agnes called from the bedroom. "Amelia, dear, could you help me sit up?" The request grounded her back in reality. Whatever her new circumstances, two elderly people still depended on her care. She helped Agnes into a chair by the window and brushed the old woman's thinning hair. "You've been crying," Agnes observed with the sharpness that had returned to her mind over recent weeks. "Things are changing, Mrs. Lawton. Change isn't always bad, dear. Sometimes it's exactly what we need." That evening, word spread through town about the fancy lawyer staying at the hotel. People speculated about his business. Some had overheard his questions about Amelia. Sheriff Jessup arrived at the ranch the next morning with Mayor Thompson and 3 members of the town council. Their faces carried the stern disapproval of men who felt their authority threatened. "We're here about the situation with your cook," Mayor Thompson announced. "Dr. Williams has filed a formal complaint. She's been treating patients without proper credentials." Jedrick stood on his porch facing the 5 men. "She's been saving lives." "That's not the point," Sheriff Jessup interjected. "We have laws and social order to maintain." "Social order?" Jedrick's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You mean keeping people in their assigned places?" "We mean maintaining stability in our community." Amelia appeared in the doorway behind Jedrick. She wore a simple work dress, but something in her posture had changed. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes held new confidence. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the refined diction of her Eastern education, "I believe you wanted to speak with me." The men shifted uncomfortably. They had expected the usual deference. Instead, they faced a woman who spoke like the educated class they claimed to represent. "We're ordering you to stop practicing medicine," Mayor Thompson said. "It's illegal and inappropriate." "I see." Amelia stepped fully onto the porch. "Tell me, when Tommy Miller had that fever last month, what did Dr. Williams prescribe?" "That's not your concern." "He prescribed bloodletting and mercury treatments. Tommy nearly died. I gave his mother willow bark tea and showed her how to reduce his temperature with cool cloths. The boy recovered in 3 days." The men exchanged glances. Everyone knew about Tommy Miller's recovery. "Mrs. Henderson's baby had severe stomach problems," Amelia continued. "Dr. Williams said there was nothing to be done. I adjusted the child's feeding schedule and recommended different foods. The baby is healthy now." "You're overstepping your bounds," Sheriff Jessup warned. "Am I? Or am I using knowledge and skills that surpass what's available in this community?" Her confidence rattled them. This was not the submissive cook they had expected to intimidate. "Furthermore," Amelia said, pulling Thomas Whitmore's documents from her apron pocket, "I believe my circumstances have changed somewhat." She handed the papers to Mayor Thompson. His face went pale as he read about her inheritance and restored social standing. "This changes nothing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Doesn't it? I'm now in a position to fund proper medical facilities in this territory, to bring in trained doctors and establish schools." The men realized they were no longer dealing with someone they could dismiss or threaten. Amelia Sutton had transformed from invisible cook to wealthy philanthropist in the span of a single conversation. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone on that porch understood the implications. The town council members retreated from the Lawton Ranch like men who had poked a sleeping mountain lion. Mayor Thompson clutched the legal documents, his face still pale from the shock of Amelia's revelation. Within hours, news of her inheritance spread through the community faster than wildfire. The cook they had dismissed and scorned was now worth more than their entire town combined. Amelia sat in Agnes's bedroom, reading aloud from a book of poetry. The old woman listened with bright eyes, her health continuing to improve under careful medical attention. "You're different today," Agnes observed, "stronger somehow. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in 3 years." Walter stirred in his bed across the room. His speech had returned gradually under Amelia's care, though his words came slowly. "Always knew you were special," he managed. "The way you move your hands when you work, like a surgeon." Amelia smiled. "Your son has good instincts, too. He chose to trust me when others would have sent me away." "Jedric's learned something these past weeks," Agnes said, "about seeing people for who they really are." At the general store, Mrs. Patterson whispered to her customers about the shocking news. "That woman has been living among us like she belonged here. Now we find out she's richer than all of us put together." "Makes you wonder what else she's been hiding," replied Mrs. Chen, the baker's wife. Some townspeople felt embarrassed by their previous treatment of Amelia. Others grew more resentful, uncomfortable with their assumptions being proven wrong so dramatically. Dr. Williams paced in his small office, furious that a woman he had dismissed as ignorant possessed more medical knowledge than he did. His treatments had failed where hers succeeded. His reputation suffered while hers grew. Sheriff Jessup sat in the saloon, nursing a whiskey and contemplating the changed landscape. The woman he had tried to intimidate now held enough power to influence territorial politics. Thomas Whitmore visited the ranch again, bringing more detailed financial reports. He spread papers across Jedric's kitchen table while Amelia reviewed her father's restored empire. "The shipping business has expanded during your absence," Whitmore explained. "Your father's managers kept everything running efficiently. The profits have been substantial." Amelia studied columns of numbers that represented more money than she could have imagined. "What about the educational trust?" "Growing steadily. Your father's vision was to establish schools in underserved areas, places where intelligent people lack opportunities." She looked around the modest ranch house that had become her sanctuary. "Places like frontier territories." "Exactly." Jedric entered the kitchen, having finished his evening ranch duties. He had been quiet since learning about Amelia's wealth, processing how dramatically their relationship had shifted. "There's something else," Whitmore continued. "Your father left detailed instructions about his hopes for your future. He wanted you to use your education and resources to help others gain the same advantages you received." Amelia's throat tightened with emotion. Even facing false accusations and financial ruin, her father had believed in her potential to create positive change. "I need to return to Philadelphia," she said quietly. "There are business decisions that require my presence." Jedric's jaw tensed. He had grown to depend on her wisdom and partnership. More than that, he had come to respect her as an equal in ways he had never expected. "What about my parents?" he asked. "I'll stay until we can arrange proper care for them." "But Jedric, I have responsibilities in the East now." "I understand." His voice carried disappointment mixed with resignation. That evening, Amelia walked through the ranch grounds, thinking about the choice ahead of her. She could return to Philadelphia and reclaim her place in society, attend opera performances and dinner parties, live in comfort and respectability. But Agnes and Walter still needed her. The community had begun seeking her medical advice, despite official disapproval. Children in town had no access to quality education. Women had no opportunities to develop their intellectual potential. She thought about her father's educational trust and his vision for helping underserved communities. The frontier territory qualified as underserved in every possible way. Agnes appeared on the back porch, walking slowly but steadily. Her recovery had been remarkable, but she remained fragile. "You're thinking about leaving," the old woman said. "I have obligations back east. You have opportunities here too. Different ones, but perhaps more meaningful." Amelia helped Agnes into a porch chair. The evening air carried the scent of prairie grass and distant cattle. "The people here have treated you poorly," Agnes continued. "But they're starting to understand their mistakes. You could help them do better. Or I could return to a world where my education and background are respected." "Respect that's given easily isn't worth as much as respect that's earned through service." Walter joined them on the porch, moving carefully but independently. His transformation from bedridden invalid to functioning man stood as testimony to Amelia's capabilities. "Stay," he said simply. "This place needs what you can offer." Jedrick emerged from the barn, having finished his evening chores. He approached the porch where three people who had become his unlikely family sat contemplating the future. "I have a proposal," he said. "Something that might give you the best of both worlds." Amelia looked up at him, curious about what solution he might offer to her impossible choice between duty and desire, between reclaiming her past and building something entirely new. Jedrick sat on the porch steps, his proposal forming carefully in his mind. "What if we combined your inheritance with my land to create something this territory has never seen before?" Amelia studied his face in the lamplight. "What do you mean?" "A medical clinic and school. Professional health care for everyone who needs it, regardless of their ability to pay. Education for children whose parents can't afford private tutors." Agnes leaned forward in her chair. "That would serve the community better than anything we have now. You'd be a partner, not an employee," Jedrick continued. "Equal ownership, equal decision-making. Your money and knowledge combined with my resources and connections." The idea sparked something deep in Amelia's chest. Her father's educational trust could fund exactly this kind of project. His vision of helping underserved communities could become reality in the most unlikely place. "The town council would never approve it," she said. "They don't get to approve private business ventures on private land." Thomas Whitmore had been listening from inside the house. He stepped onto the porch with interest. "Miss Sutton, this aligns perfectly with your father's wishes for the educational trust." "The legal structure would be complex," Amelia said. "A woman owning property and running a business in this territory. Your inheritance gives you legal standing, and having a male partner would smooth some of the bureaucratic challenges." Walter struggled to speak from his chair. "People here are starting to see what you can do. Tommy Miller's recovery, Mrs. Henderson's baby. They know you save lives." 3 days later, Mayor Thompson called a town meeting to address what he termed recent disruptions to community stability. The meeting hall filled with curious residents, all eager to witness the confrontation between established authority and unexpected wealth. Amelia entered wearing a blue dress Thomas Whitmore had purchased for her in the territorial capital. The fine fabric and expert tailoring transformed her appearance, but her confidence came from within. She carried a leather portfolio containing her inheritance documents and detailed plans for the medical clinic and school. Mayor Thompson stood at the front of the room, flanked by Sheriff Jessup and Dr. Williams. "We're here to discuss the situation with Miss Sutton and establish clear boundaries for acceptable behavior in our community." "I believe Miss Sutton has something to say first," Jedrick interrupted, rising from his seat in the front row. Amelia stood and walked to the front of the room. Every eye followed her movement. Whispered conversations died away. "3 months ago, I was just a cook in your kitchens," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "You saw me as invisible, unimportant, beneath your notice. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but I was never invisible. I was watching, learning, taking note of how you treated people you considered less than yourselves." Mrs. Patterson fanned herself nervously. Several men crossed their arms defensively. "Tommy Miller nearly died because Dr. Williams prescribed treatments that made him sicker. I saved that boy with knowledge I learned at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School." Dr. Williams's face flushed red. "You have no credentials. I have education, I have results, and now I have resources." She opened her portfolio and displayed her inheritance documents. "I propose to establish a medical clinic and school on land provided by Mr. Lawton, professional health care and education for anyone who needs it." Mayor Thompson stood abruptly. "This community doesn't need your charity." "You're right. You need partnership." Amelia's voice remained calm and steady. "I'm offering to invest in this territory's future, to bring in trained doctors and certified teachers, to create opportunities your children have never had." Agnes Lawton rose slowly from her seat near the back. Her recovery from near death had become local legend. "This woman saved my life when everyone else had given up on me." Walter struggled to his feet beside his wife. "She saved mine too, gave us back our dignity and our health." Mrs. Henderson stood next, holding her healthy baby. "My daughter would have died without Miss Sutton's help." One by one, people Amelia had helped began standing throughout the hall. Ranch hands whose injuries she had treated, children whose fevers she had broken, mothers whose complications she had resolved. The visual impact was undeniable. Nearly half the room stood in testimony to her capabilities. Sheriff Jessup looked around at the standing crowd, realizing his position had become untenable. The woman he had tried to intimidate now commanded more respect than his badge. Dr. Williams faced the evidence of his own failures reflected in Amelia's successes. His medical practice had been exposed as inadequate by someone he had dismissed as unqualified. The clinic will be staffed by licensed physicians, Amelia continued. The school will employ certified teachers. Everything will meet territorial legal requirements. And if we refuse to support this venture? Mayor Thompson asked. Then you'll have missed an opportunity to improve your community. The clinic and school will serve anyone who wants quality health care and education. Thomas Whitmore stepped forward with additional documents. Miss Sutton's Educational Trust has approved funding for this project. Construction can begin immediately. The room buzzed with whispered conversations as people absorbed the reality of the situation. The woman they had scorned was offering to transform their community with her own resources. Jedrick stood beside Amelia, demonstrating his partnership and support. The question isn't whether this community deserves this opportunity. The question is whether you're wise enough to accept it. The town faced a choice that would define their future and test their capacity for growth beyond prejudice. The town meeting erupted in heated discussions as neighbors debated Amelia's proposal. Some families argued quietly in their seats, while others stood to voice support or opposition. Mayor Thompson called for order, but the hall remained divided. The visual testimony of Amelia's medical successes had shifted public opinion in ways he hadn't anticipated. Mrs. Chen, the baker's wife, stood slowly. My husband's arm was infected after an accident at the mill. Dr. Williams said amputation might be necessary. Miss Sutton cleaned the wound properly, and it healed completely. Her words carried weight because everyone knew the Chen family rarely spoke up in community matters. The question before us is simple, Amelia said, regaining control of the room. Do you want progress or do you want to remain limited by old assumptions? Sheriff Jessup looked around at the faces of people he had sworn to protect and serve. Many of them owed their health or their children's lives to the woman he had tried to suppress. I withdraw my objections, he announced quietly. Miss Sutton has proven her value to this community. His public reversal sent ripples through the hall. If the sheriff supported Amelia's clinic, opposition became much more difficult to maintain. Dr. Williams stood with visible frustration. This sets a dangerous precedent. Next, you'll have every cook and cleaning woman claiming medical expertise. No, Amelia replied calmly. They'll have access to proper medical training if they show aptitude and interest. The school will offer advanced courses for anyone willing to learn. The concept of education based on ability rather than social position challenged everything the community had accepted about opportunity and advancement. Mayor Thompson realized his authority was slipping away. The town's wealthiest new resident had just offered to improve everyone's lives, and opposing her would make him look petty and obstructive. I propose we put this matter to a community vote, he said, trying to salvage some control over the situation. There's no need for a vote, Jedrick interjected. This is a private business venture on private land. We're informing the community as a courtesy, not asking permission. The legal reality settled over the room. Amelia's wealth and property rights gave her the power to proceed regardless of popular opinion. 6 months later, construction crews finished the medical clinic and school building. The structure rose from the prairie like a symbol of transformation, its clean lines and modern design unlike anything the territory had seen before. Dr. Sarah Mitchell arrived from Chicago to serve as the clinic's head physician. She brought 2 trained nurses and the latest medical equipment. For the first time, the community had access to professional health care that met Eastern standards. The school opened with 3 certified teachers and a curriculum that included advanced mathematics, literature, and sciences. Children who had never imagined learning beyond basic reading and arithmetic suddenly had access to knowledge that could take them anywhere. Amelia split her time between managing the facilities and continuing her own medical work. She had earned the unofficial title of Dr. Sutton through community recognition rather than formal certification. Agnes and Walter Lawton had become the clinic's greatest advocates, sharing their recovery story with anyone who would listen. Their transformation from dying invalids to healthy advocates demonstrated what proper medical care could accomplish. "You saved more than our lives," Agnes told Amelia during one of her regular visits. "You saved our dignity and our purpose." The Educational Trust had approved funding for similar projects in 2 other territories. Amelia's success in the frontier town had become a model for bringing quality healthcare and education to underserved communities across the West. Thomas Whitmore returned every few months to handle legal matters and bring news from Philadelphia. Amelia's father's shipping business continued to prosper under professional management, generating funds for additional projects. "Your father would be proud," he told her during his latest visit. "You've exceeded even his ambitious hopes for the Educational Trust." Sheriff Jessup had become one of Amelia's strongest allies, ensuring the clinic and school operated without interference from territorial bureaucrats who might question their integrated policies. Dr. Williams had left town after losing most of his patients to the superior care available at the clinic. His departure removed the last significant source of professional opposition to Amelia's work. On a warm spring morning, Amelia stood in the school's main classroom watching 12 children of various backgrounds work together on arithmetic problems. The sight filled her with the same satisfaction she had felt when Agnes first sat up in bed months earlier. Jedrick found her there, reviewing reports from the clinic's latest month of operations. Their partnership had evolved into something deeper than business collaboration, built on mutual respect and shared vision. "The territorial governor wants to visit next month," he told her. "Word about our success has reached the capital." "Good. Maybe we can convince him to fund similar projects in other communities. You've changed this entire territory, you know. People see possibilities now that they never imagined before." Amelia looked out the window at the bustling community that had transformed along with her own circumstances. The invisible cook had become a respected leader, but more importantly, she had created opportunities for others to discover their own potential. "My father always said education and healthcare were the foundations of human dignity. I'm just continuing his work in a place where it was desperately needed." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the prairie as children's laughter echoed from the schoolyard, and patients left the clinic with renewed health and hope for their futures.